and welcome to the Hasn't Been Named Yet podcast. My name is Kara Goucher, and I'm super excited to be sitting down with Desiree Linden. And I have to just ask you right now, because Des introduced our first two episodes and called herself Desiree Linden. And have I been calling you the wrong name for years?
No, Des is it. I don't know why I do that. I'm being formal.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I feel like, yeah. As long as you don't call me Desi, we're good.
Oh, well, that was, people
we're not
called you
going
that
into
for a
that.
while.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
well, you
is my
guys all
mom
heard.
here?
You can call her Desiree Linden when in a professional setting, or Des if you're just hanging out talking about running. So, all right. So we're really excited for this conversation. We've talked about this through text for a few times about how we'd like to talk about this. So today we're going to talk about broadcasting and it's like behind the scenes and what it's like for Des and I when we do it. So I'm just going to kick it off by saying, Des, how did your broadcasting career start?
It was an accident. Totally unexpected. Josh was putting on the Marathon Project in 2020, and I feel like on the track scene, a few people had been testing the waters, and like names of people I like was like listening to, like I could probably, they're doing a good job, but I bet I could do that. So the Marathon Project was happening, and I was like, hey, like who's doing the broadcast? Can I throw my name in the ring? And he like has pretty strong pull because he was putting on the event, and he was like, yeah, sure. And it was supposed to be on Runner Space, and me and Paul, and we're just chopping it up talking about the Marathon Project. And then as it got closer, he was like, oh, actually we got it on NBC, so you're going to be on the broadcast and it's going to be on NBC. And I was like, oh, that's like dramatically different. And that's how I got into broadcasting. And so I met with Becky Chapman for one meeting, and she showed me 6 video clips of what to do and what not to do, and then they sent me on my way.
Was one of those clips the lemon chiffon
Yes.
that Johnny Weir said?
Yeah, they're very memorable.
Okay, so no one trained you or anything, so I need to know this. So Josh put your name in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
Becky Chapman called you, showed you the 6 clips. I'm pretty sure we had the same meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just went for it? Or did anyone help you?
Fly,
so no one helped
butterfly. No, I got in touch with a number of people and was like, let me throw a bunch of questions at you. And they gave me really good feedback. And then obviously Josh was a great resource who had done NBC broadcasts for a good number of years. And then we did the Marathon Project, which, was simple, but it wasn't, in fairness, and we'll probably get into this, it wasn't formatted. It was like, this is Runner Space. It's a long podcast where you talk the whole time. And then the producer would pop into our ear and be like, okay, this segment is for NBC. Don't be like runner nerds, make it for everyone. And then I'll tell you when we pop out of the NBC segment and it's for your runner nerd friends. And then you can go back to being a runner nerd. And that was like the segments.
Okay, so that just brings up a point right away that I want people to know. Depending on where we're broadcasting and what channel we're broadcasting for, we can be more runner nerdy or less. I get a lot of feedback of, you're talking to us like we're children. We know what the splits mean. But not everybody in the general NBC audience knows that. And so it is kind of this battle where you sort of toggle between like, you could just throw out splits and kilometers and talk about stuff. But if it's someone's never run before, never watched a race before, is flipping through, they hear that, they're going to keep flipping, right? So you need to talk, that's hard for me, I think, is the straddling, like bringing in new people, but also like our hardcore fans, appeasing them and their knowledge in the sport. Do you ever feel that way?
Oh, that's like one of the biggest challenges is you're an expert analyst. And so we're picked because we have all this experience, right? And so like, what certain scenarios in the Olympics feel like, what call rooms are like. You've been in so many of these scenarios that you have an expert opinion, but it's all exposition. And you realize that when you're writing a book, totally different topic, but like you have to tee it up. You can't just say like, well, I went to the Boston Marathon. Like, when did that start? Like, give me a little background about the Boston Marathon. Why is it so important? Like, everything's exposition. and then you have like X amount of time to do it. So like you're trying to do two really different things, like explain the very basics of it, but give insight that only insiders know and have, and like bring those together. Oh, and you have 15 seconds.
Right.
That's my experience.
Right. And there's someone in your ear saying like, wrap it up, wrap it up, wrap it up. And it's very confusing. So that first one, you got through it. A marathon, that's a long call for your first call. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? What was the feeling afterwards? Where you were like, okay, that wasn't so bad, I could do that? Or were you like, oh, I never want to do this again?
I loved the marathon. I was like, I knew it. It was easy. Like, this was super fun. It's just like these podcasts, like we just chat about running, and it was super long form. And again, I didn't know like what a real broadcast was going to be, because that was so loose and like informal, and they probably let me get away with, I mean, I know they let me get away with stuff that like when you get on a formatted show, they're like, no. So that was like my intro. And then I think a week or two later, Becky Chapman sent me an email. I was like, hey, you did a really good job. I watched the show. Would you be interested in doing indoor? And I was like, well, I just crushed. So yeah, like bring it on. And then I got a formatted show, which and I'm assuming that your first, like, only your shows have only been formatted, is my assumption.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So where was your first call?
So my first call was at the Pepsi Relays in Eugene, but it was a 2-hour show. So the first hour we were on USA Network calling the Drake Relays from the stadium in Eugene. And then the second, I guess it was 3 hours, maybe it was 4 hours, I don't know. But the second half of the show was what we were actually watching in front of us.
Oh,
and fun. Like I had been reached out to by NBC if I was interested. I said, not really. I did it twice at Houston Marathon. Everyone just talked over me. I don't really want to do it. Becky's like, can we just have a conversation? So we had that conversation where she showed me the video she showed you. And then I did an audition. So for 2 hours, I called old races with Lee Diffie to see if we had any chemistry.
Ooh.
And then after that, it was, you know what? I was so like, let's just see what happens. And I have to say, I had so much fun. But remember, this is just an audition, right? Like nothing I say is going anywhere. And I remember I came out of the office and Adam was like, who is that woman in there? You're like shouting and yelling. And I'm like, I know, it was so fun. But then then I actually did get trained. So I worked with Betsy Riley and we broke down all of the races that I called. And it was very humbling. Oh God, so humbling. Where we'd go back and watch it. And I think we did that over 6-hour sessions or something like that. And then my first call was this one in Eugene.
Okay.
And there was an on camera and the show. And it was just so overwhelming. Like they told me to like, oh, wear something cute from your closet. So I took a picture. They go, oh yeah, wear that. Before we even started, I had completely sweat through my dress.
So nervous for you?
Oh, just so nervous. And then so I put a sport coat over it and they're like, no, that doesn't look good. And I was like, too bad. I had my hair in a bun, which I later found out it didn't look good on TV or whatever. But it just was like this very stressful experience. I spoke on a hot mic. It was all just going so fast. And I just remember afterward, I was so exhausted and I called Adam and I was like, this is not for me. This was so stressful. I can't do this.
No effing way. Right.
Yeah. It was just like, this is like, you have to be a different personality to really soar in this field. And, but they talked me into trying one more. And then I went to Mount Sac, I think. And it was like a shorter, condensed show. And I got a little bit more confidence there. And yeah, then it was Olympic trials. But it was it's just so crazy. Like when you're in the more I do it, the more comfortable I get. But those first couple times, I'm just like shaking. I hate the on camera. I wanted to ask you how you feel about like when I find out there's on camera, I cry and Sonia Richards-Ross is like, yes. And I'm like, and I even asked Betsy during the Olympic trials, like, can I just not be on camera? Because I can't memorize the line. So like we'd practice it. And then they'd be like, just say exactly what you just said. And then I would, the very first time at the Olympic trials, when it went live, I couldn't talk. I don't know. A lot of people, thanks, Sidious Mag people, let me know that they noticed. Lee said something and looked at me, and I was just like, the Olympic trials are here.
The more takes, the worse I am. Like, I need like spontaneity. Let's just have a real authentic conversation. If I say something weird, like, get over it. But they do. They're like, we're going to rehearse this. And you're like, well, my joke loses all its like, if we practice this, and then I sound weird.
Okay, yeah. So I want to know, when you look at that format and you're like, oh, there's 2 on cameras or whatever, how does that make you feel? Are you like, okay, it's no big deal? Or are you like, oh, I don't want to do that?
I think all of it was such a stretch for me that I was like, more stuff that I'm uncomfortable with. Like, that's cool. Like, this is all like so out of my realm of like experience. And I probably mentioned this a few times on the podcast, but I'm an introvert. So like part of doing it was just being like, you got to stretch yourself and try something new. And like, you do have like the information, like you can put together like entertaining sentences and like be engaging when you need to be. So like put yourself in this scenario where you have to do it. And like, there is a race day feel element to it where you're like, okay, like pressure's on, like the light comes on, they go, okay, we're on in 3, 2, 1. And you're like, oh, like this is like getting to the start line. So I like all that because it stretches me and it challenges me, but it stretches me and challenges me because it's not my comfort zone at all.
What's your favorite part of the call? It's so funny. I was watching a race last year you were calling with Ellie St. Pierre, and you were saying like the exact things that I would say. It was so funny. Like I was like, I was like kind of talking with you, but what's your, like, do you like the beginning, the bulk of it, the ending? Like, what's your favorite part when you're in that moment calling those races?
I don't like the beginning. I feel like I need like room to like let the race develop, and like you're just giving like bio stuff. Again, it's the exposition. Like that's the really basic, let me welcome you to the sport. I don't like that because I'm like, I don't think this way. And then you get into the meat and potatoes of the race, and that stuff's fun because you're like, this is why, like, and I guess we should explain like what we're doing is telling why things are happening. It's not what's happening. That's Paul or Lee. And then we go and like, this is why it's happening. And so like to be able to use experiences and like have, background information on things that are going on, that's fun. That's where I think I thrive. And then obviously as it develops, it depends what race I'm calling. Like indoor stuff, I don't like. I'm so unfamiliar with indoor that it's like,
you ran at a world championship.
I did, but like I probably didn't count the laps right. Like I'm like times, like I know it's like everything's just cut in half or whatever, but like it's just more things for me that I'm like, I haven't seen this in so long. Like, what lap are we on? Like 4. Like, okay, so the 1500 should be done, and so as it develops, like the times become more important, and like that part, like crunching the numbers and getting the numbers from the research person and being like, okay, lap 7, what? So I need to get more familiar with that. But outdoor, that's easy. I love the end of races where it's like, this is the big finale. And again, for me, the stretch is like not getting excited because I am passionate about it and I really enjoy watching track and I enjoy watching good track, and like I'll push out of my chair and be like, oh my God, it's going to be a world record. Like, but like using my voice to like convey that excitement for me is like, it never, like I'm not a screamer. I'm just never going to be like, I'll use like more excitement, like excited words or whatever it is. But having that energy like really come through is always another challenge too, which I think you're really great at. Like I can feel the race building through your voice. Like, okay, she's getting amped. Like this is exciting. Like even if you knew nothing about track, like just following your excitement level through voice, I'm like, oh, like I should be getting excited, So,
yeah. It's funny you say that because the first meet that I did afterwards, Sonia was like, so obviously you spoke on a hot mic. Don't do that again. And also like, could you be more excited? And I thought I was like so excited, right? But yeah, that is a little bit. I mean, I just love track and field so much, and so I love getting towards the end. I always like kick my chair out, and I'm so excited. But then it's like, I don't want to step on Lee either. And that's sometimes a problem because I'm so excited, but I don't know, like, I'm sure you've had the same experience. Like, I didn't know that as the analyst with 200 meters to go, you shut up. Like, I didn't know that, like, this is why Lee gets paid the big bucks. He's the one that brings it home. He's on all the replays. He's on the tweets. He's on the captured forever. I didn't know that. So like when Lee and I first started working together, I would just like be jumping in with like 50 meters to go. And so like, he's so nice, but it's like the producers finally were like, yeah, that's not your job. You know, you don't bring them home and like just stuff like that. And then I didn't know that I was supposed to do the replays. So, you know, Lee's calling the last 200 and I'm just kind of sitting back eating a snack. And then he's like tapping me like, no, you're supposed to do. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what? So it's just like this crazy learning curve. And I feel like I was so lucky to be able to do the trials because it was day after day after day after day having to just like get in there and do it. And that helped me progress a lot. But it's just, it's really awkward. And I want to talk about some things that like people don't know. Like you mentioned formats. Let's talk about what that is for all the people listening.
Yeah. Like, so I'm going to go back one quick second. Did you learn that stuff in like your rehearsal or was it like in like they were like
at the Olympic trials?
So and like this is to your point, there's so much stuff that you don't know until you're doing it wrong. And then like it's real time in your ear, like, hey, don't say we, or like, hey, can you actually like if you're going to use a coach's name, you need to, and like, oh, I'm real time learning how bad I am at this.
I know it can be super deflating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that that's a shared experience. But as far as the format goes, like when did you see your first format? And mine was indoors, so it was like just a big packet comes over and you're like, what does this all mean? And you get the breakdown of like there's just so much to it.
Yeah. I think that's part that people don't understand is like literally every 15 seconds is broken down. So if there's a false start, the whole it just shifts the entire show, right? Like I didn't realize how intricate everything was mapped out. And, you know, we go to commercials, which people hate and I used to hate, but now being on this side, I'm like, well, someone has to pay for this broadcast, you know? And even though I hate that it usually ends up in the distance races, field event gets it even worse than us, right? So 100%. Anyway, I didn't understand like how intricately everything was broken down. Like I brought one home to show Adam because I was like, this is crazy. Like if they false start twice or anything, it throws the entire rest of the show off. And now you're trying to make up that 45 seconds or that 2 minutes. You're trying to make that up. And so in real time you can hear everyone's talking like, well, should we cut this package? Can we cut that? So we're not going to go there. Should we go? You know, and it's just so crazy. But yeah, the first time I saw a format, I was just like, what is this? Page after page after page of every little thing's, you know, printed out of what we're going to be focusing on.
So it is like literally in 15 seconds to maybe 2 minute blocks or something like that. The first time I saw one, I was like, okay, like, you know, here's the intros. Like I have to memorize what I'm going to say in 15 seconds, but if it's short, like that's going to be awkward. If it's long, like I can't do that. So like, it's like overthinking, like I need this soundbite to be 15 seconds. And then it was eventually like, okay, you can like bleed into this. And then Paul, like there's some like flux here. There's buffer room, but not much, you know, and then you get on to the next thing. And it's like, I think for most meets, it's like the intros, you're going to go lane by lane or like pick the stars to watch. You're going to see the few people and have like your bio for each person. Race goes off. Usually Paul or Lee would, you know, do this is what's happening. And then you just kind of bounce back and forth. But it is like really, it's like calculated in like how you interact, when you interact, and why you're interacting.
Right. Like I remember calling a race and Betsy was in my ear and she goes, please elaborate on that and explain that a little better, but in less than 10 seconds. I'm like, what?
So do you like producer in the ear giving you like cues or you just like get out of my ear? Like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I want to say. Like, what's your preference there?
So I've only worked with 4 producers. Betsy was the producer for the Olympic trials and the Olympics in 2021. And she had a very good way of saying Kara and like talking calmly to me. And I loved that. But she left because she got a really good job. at Amazon Football. And so then I was working with like some of the smaller meets, Scott Carpin, I'm sure you've worked with him. And this past year for the USA's and the World Championships, it was Greeny, Steve Greenberg. I don't even know his real last name. He was kind of like hands off, like would give me feedback at the end of the day, which honestly, I don't like that because it's too late for me to like make a shift, but that's just his personality. It is like, you're doing great. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to let you know where I needed something different. And I'm like, just tell me now, because then at least I can kind of adjust.
Did he have, I mean, Greeny he's a hockey background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did he have like track insights, or like what kind of insights were you getting?
Just the way, I mean, it's like, you have to have thick skin, I will just say too.
Oh yeah.
The way that, cause didn't come just like you. I didn't want to be on TV. I didn't like come up through some system where I was like training in communications to be here. And so the way I commentate is the way that I talk and the way that I like talk to my family and my friends and talk to you right now. And that's not for everybody. And so just like buttoning up some stuff, I think I'm a little like wooey for him at times. And so then learning to like kind of draw that in, what is really important? Did I really need to say that one thing, or would it have fit in better later? And it's harder too, because at those bigger races, as each of the heats and semifinals and progress, they don't want you to talk as much about bio, where I love, not bio, I don't necessarily love, but I love like trying to make them seem human.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, this is Faith Kipyegon or Kipyegon, sorry. And these are all like her stats, but I also want to be like, and she does all these things for women in Kenya, and she has a daughter, and, and there's a time and a place for that. And I think that's where I was overdoing it. Yeah. Trying to like really humanize everyone in that moment. Whereas like they got to know them over the races. Now we just need to see the race.
That's so interesting, because it does develop like within the race, like if it's a one-off, you have that storyline where it's, if you're Betsy, she would say bites at the apple. Like the first one, like we're going to start really big. And like, let's say you get 3, then you get smaller and smaller. And really by the end, you're just focused on racing. But that also happens throughout like a weekend check meet. So you get like, it tapers down and then you're just at the fine tune stuff. That's interesting. I've never done I guess I did US indoors, but that's not like, it wasn't heats, finals, stuff like that. So that's fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, like just the whole messaging is different as you get to those final races, which I'm always trying to like bring out the like, but she also did this, or he also did this, like he's not just a super fast 1500 meter runner. He also does this, and that's where I have to like,
today he's just the fast guy.
He's just the fast guy today, Karen. Don't try to like, yeah. And I think I would assume you've had this, but do you ever feel conflicted? So I get to pick like the 3 people that we're going to focus on the line. And sometimes it's a really easy choice, but sometimes I feel like so conflicted because maybe you're only going to give them 10 to 20 seconds, but they're going to get a little viewer attachment that the other people aren't going to get. And I find that difficult to pick who are the 3 people that we're going to focus on right now.
Yeah, that's always a hard part, because it's like you're thinking about so many different things, and like, who are we trying to appease? Like, is it the people that we're going to see late in the race, like really making the moves, like trying to win, but are they interesting? Like, is the story like the storyline with this person who's probably not going to make a factor, maybe will PR, but the story is so cool. Like, do I tell that? And I think it's give and take. I feel like Diamond League, there's never a wrong answer. Like, it's such a unique space, and they get to show up every couple weeks and have their opportunity. So I never feel bad about who I pick there. But big indoor meets like Millrose or something like that, like, dang, did I pick the wrong person?
Yeah.
But
it stresses me out. Like there's usually 1 or 2 that are super obvious, but then I'm like, well, I could highlight this person who doesn't get very much attention, or I could, and then I'm just like, I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned Diamond League. Let's talk about calling Diamond League, because I actually think calling Diamond League is so hard.
Oh my gosh, I think it's so much easier than the
Okay, so let's talk about Okay, why do you think it's easier? And then I'll tell you why I think it's hard.
All right. Well, I've done like one-offs, so like never in the same. I think the only event that I've done in the same place is Boston New Balance Indoor. So that was at I can't think of the name of the place, but wherever in New York. So that was like the second year I was like, oh, I know like what the setup's like. I know like, I was just more familiar with everything. Diamond League, I do in my house. I know what my setup is. I know where I'm putting my materials. I know how to like access the splits are the same every week. Like I've had a had an in-person call where for some reason I was looking at the computer screen with the splits and it was giving me the latest 100-meter split. And I'm like, I don't know what, this is not useful for me at all. Like it's a 1,500 meter. And it's like their last 100 was running whatever. I'm like, this doesn't really help me. I need to know like the quarter split or whatever. So like at home, like I just have my setup and I feel like really comfortable with it. And like it's the routine. Like every week you can tweak it and dial it in a little bit better. Where I haven't been in enough places enough times where I'm like, oh, like if I went back to Melrose, I would realize like you're set up on the backstretch, like far corner of the track, like you're almost eye level with it, and then you really can't see across because everything's like blocked. So like you probably should be standing up, and like it's just things that you learn as you go, but you don't get a lot of repetition at the in-person meet unless it's a couple day affair. Diamond League, I know my setup. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah. Okay. I find Diamond League so hard simply because I can't see what's happening. I'm like, I can only see what the camera's showing me. And I don't think people understand that. Like, we're just seeing what you're seeing. We don't have like another camera of another angle or, like the first time I called a Diamond League, I was calling the 5,000. We went to commercial break and like the screen went black.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, we can't still see what's happening. They're like, no, you'll be fine. I'm like, no, I'm not fine. I don't, So we like came back from commercial and God bless him. Paul's like, Kara, what do we have going on in this 5K? And I'm like, I don't know,
So let's take a look.
I'm like, let me see what the next split is. But I find it so hard. And I do feel like I'm a better commentator when I'm there. I can stand up. I can see the athletes come out. I can feel the weather. If we go to a commercial break or if we go picture, mm-hmm. I can still see everything that's happening. I can still be jotting down my own splits. Where Diamond League, I just like, I don't know how you do such a good job because I am a complete disaster at Diamond League. I just feel like I don't know what's happening. It's all over so fast and I can't see it the way I need to see it.
I think it's repetition though, because I feel like that's probably the thing you've called the least, right? And so you don't like have your shortcuts yet. And that's like really what it is. It's like getting organized and knowing your shortcuts to get the information and like get it out as smoothly and as accurately as possible. So it's just like spending more time. It's that's the frustrating but fun part about it is like the more you do it, the better you get. But every time you're out there, it's like your draft version, like your practice is very public, and like if you're bad at it, everyone like you have to have thick skin. So the Twitter crowd is one thing and then your producer is another thing. But then you just have to roll with it and do the next one, which I don't know. It's tough because the next one could be totally different set of challenges.
I'm dying to know. So we get sheets from NBC that have like basic bios on everybody. And then I listen to a bazillion podcasts, watch some old races, read a bunch of articles, and then I have like my own sheet and then I combine them. But once the gun goes off, I never look at my sheet again. Are you that like people are telling me like you need to have sticky notes because you're always recalling from your head and that's not safe. But the thing is like I tried to do that. I should show you. I tried to sticky note it and it made me more panicked because I was like, now I'm looking down and I'm trying to refer to my sticky notes. So like when I get people on Twitter attacking me because I said one thing wrong, I'm like, dude,
sorry.
You have no idea all of the information that's in my head right now. And I can't believe you're going to call me out on this one thing when I said the wrong year that they won the NCAA championship,
Right.
So yeah, I'm dying to know, like, are you able to access your notes during the race?
I'm sticky notes.
You are sticky notes.
Sticky notes. And this is like the pile of Diamond League material, which let's see if we can get a sound in there.
So this was my attempt at sticky notes and it didn't work. I tried it. And then I went to Chicken Scribble.
That's probably, I mean, whatever, like it's whatever it takes. And here's how I got to sticky notes is that I was like, oh, like I'll use an Excel sheet, like Paul's been using Excel and like it worked for a marathon project. Marathon project, you have like in the marathon, you can take your time.
Sure.
Which if you get good enough, like you grab your sheet and you're like, Noah Droddy, his personal best is, and he's having a really good year, but he's chasing down. And then you can take the time, grab your note, and then recall the right thing. And if you're organized enough, like I've seen Otto in the middle of 100 be like reaching for his note in mid sentence. He does not have the information. And then he finds it and he says it. And it's like, you would not know that this process is going on. But if it were me, I'd be like panicking because there's just no way. But I did an Excel sheet first and I was like, I can't find shit. Like that was the first meet I ever did. I was like, I could not find a single thing that I needed when I needed it. Like this, I'm just unorganized. And Betsy's like, try sticky notes. Like that's what Sonia does. She just pulls them off when she's done with the content, and then you have like the stuff that is relevant in front of you. So I think I've started in like an even worse place than sticky notes with the Excel sheet. And then I got to the notes and I was like, these are so much better. And that's why I like them. But you were like, I have it inside, so I don't need sticky notes, but this is
it's funny
stickies
too.
for your Excel.
Yeah. Well, totally. But like for us also, like Otto and Sonia, when I first started, were like plan the ending. Like if this person wins or this person, and I'm like, it's not like a sprint. There's not just 8 people that could win today. There's a bunch of people, and there's like things can happen in a steeplechase, or people can fall in the 1500, and that's just like, I think it's just different personalities. Like I said, I was never going to be an actress. I can't memorize a line. And then if I do, it comes out so fake. That's like when I do interviews, they're like, we'll send you the questions. I'm like, you can, but I won't look at them.
Yeah.
Because then I'm going to be thinking, oh, I should have said this because I looked at it. It's just like not the way that my brain works. So yeah, I do feel like is a little difference though between like the sprinting and the distance, and then the field guys. I feel so bad for them because they're like waiting, right, for a 10-second break, and then they have 10 seconds to just get in there and update everybody, and it's so hard.
Yeah, I don't envy them at all, but they do a phenomenal job. And Diamond League, they had some great, like, I love when someone's having that moment and they get they bump something for it. And you're like, yeah, dude, put it on Mondo for a bit. This is so exciting. And like the field events are never going to get their moment. He has to be jumping for a world record for them to have this time.
Right.
And they had a few of those moments this year, which is cool. But the other thing is like, I feel like when you're kind of on the bench waiting for your turn, you just get cold. And then you have that first few lines where you're like, oh, like I haven't done this in a few minutes. Like I need to warm back up, which is maybe just me, but I feel like my shows are so infrequent that I'm like, I need a warm up line or two.
No, totally. The first race I call after like I've been gone for a couple months or whatever, I like will stutter. Like I have a nervous stutter that I've worked on for years, and I'll like like I can't get it out. Right. But then it's like the next race I start to feel better. And then by the end, I'm like kind of cocky, like I know what I'm doing. But it's a hard thing to just jump into cold.
Yeah.
It's tough.
What's your favorite event to call? Have you been on any 3-person booth 800 meters?
Yes, but
what do you think of that?
Well, it's hard, right? Because you're like not sure when you should jump in or not. I love the 800. I don't call the 800 anymore. Sonia and Otto with Lee call that now, and they do a really good job, or just Sonia and Otto, or just Otto, whatever. I don't call it anymore. I do really love the 800. I wish I got to call that race because it's so exciting. I like calling everything. I do. Probably my favorite though is the 1500 because it's like long enough that we can talk a little bit about tactics and stuff, but short enough that, sometimes run like a 10K and you're just kind of like trying to fill time because they're jogging, right? They're not going to run hard yet. This is the Olympic final or the World Championship final. They're going to wait until they have to. And so you're kind of just like filling this space. And that never happens in the 1500. And if for some reason they go out super slow, it's just exciting because the last 600 is going to be fireworks, right? So that's probably my favorite distance to call. Although I do really enjoy the marathons, and I'm sad that we aren't going to be doing Boston this year.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah.
Did you do those from Stanford last year?
Yeah. Yeah. Though I've only called 3 marathons and they were all from Stanford, which is
That's a
kind of a bummer.
big swing, like marathon down to like 15. The pace of those is so dramatically different. Like, was that an adjustment like during trials and games? I guess you didn't have the marathon at the trials, but like games, you're doing quick, snappy races and then like just pace wise. And like, how did that change?
So at the games, both of the marathons were on the last 2 days. So it was like uh, that final Saturday, I think it was the women's marathon, and then that night there was like the men's 1,500-meter final, or maybe even a 5K final. But there was so much space, and then we ended with the men's marathon, and like I feel very comfortable in the marathon.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm like, I would love to call a race with you, but I'd probably be embarrassed to call a marathon with you because you do know so much more than I do about that race and about the intricacies of it and pacing and strategy. But when you're not there, I am like, I am the ultimate expert here, right? Like I feel good about it. So I don't find that one as stressful. And like you were saying earlier, I can have notes. Like we go to commercial break. Remember when CJ Albertson was leading the Boston Marathon? I had like 2 notes about him. And then after like 3 segments, I was like, okay, I have to do some research. Like this guy is not slowing down. But because it was a marathon, I was able to do that.
Right. Do you get people like giving you stuff as well? Like, is your phone blowing up, or is it just like,
yeah, no. One time I called Nikki Hiltz she, and I didn't even feel it. I didn't even know it. It was at the Olympic trials, and we go off for commercial and my phone is blowing up. And the first person was Adam. He said, babe, you said she. And then it was like, bang, 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 bang. And then I went to Twitter and it was like pitchforks everywhere.
Yeah.
And so that was super awful. And, I was trying to right that ship as quickly as I could, but it is funny, the Twitter reactions. I definitely want to talk to you about any feedback that you've gotten. It is brutal, at least on my experience. It has been brutal, some of the feedback. How about you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, just part of the game. You can't make everyone happy. And we were also like, for me, like for both of us, you're in the middle of a learning process. So like I sort of look at it, but I'm like, I don't care. Like I just don't care. I did, and this is the wrong thing to say, but in the middle of the, final, before you have to lay out, Cole Hawker, Cooper Tier running each other down, Jordy Beamish, Beamish is in there as well. I said, take a scalp. And that was like very, very obviously poorly received. And like, I had a really long conversation with one man who was just like, this is the history of it. And this is why it's terrible. And I was like, hey, I'm super sorry. Like, this is like racing mind, but I get it. Like, I'm not going to do it again. And he just like kept sending me messages and he's like, I'm going to tell Billy Mills. And I was like, I sent him a picture. I was like, I know Billy, like, I'm super sorry. Like I'm respectful. And we just had this ongoing conversation. And eventually he was like, okay, like, I just wanted to get this point across. And I'm like, understood,
Got it.
like, and like, I was totally receptive and listened to all the comments and like literally read all the stuff. And I haven't said that since, but I've also heard other commentators use it. And
it's used all the time. I was about to say the UK announcers use that all the time.
Right.
And I wonder if they get that feedback. Yeah, that's really
I could send them the string of like, hey guys,
like, maybe you guys should rethink this. Yeah. I get a lot of the reason you have to study is because you don't live the sport, or a lot of them like they just feel a little like, I don't know, dismissive because I have an American accent and I'm a girl.
Yeah.
I mean, I made the mistake of responding to someone this summer and Lee was like, don't do that. Don't feed the trolls. But I was like, it sucks, right? Like you spend all day, like you spend so much time preparing, you do the best job you can. And then people just blast you on a word you used or the fact that you were like, didn't say the split or whatever it is that they're mad about. And it really has made me like, I used to watch, I mean, I love track and field. I've watched it since I was a kid. And when I was older, I'd be like, I can't believe they said that. How did they not remember this? And I would never, ever do that again now, because now I'm like on this side of it. It is so fast and pressure filled. And I don't care how good you are. Like everybody makes mistakes. Like I will offend someone at some point again. You probably will too.
For
It's
sure.
just, it's no one is perfect all the time. But people expect that perfection. And I get a lot of feedback too from people who call races, but in a really relaxed environment. And I'm like, it's not the same situation. Again, the format, 15 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
I appreciate your feedback. And yeah, I wish I could dig into that more and be a little bit more loosey goosey, but like, I can't, it's not the same situation that you're in.
I think it's good for people to know that it's not a long podcast. Like, it's not like just talk track and field for a really long time. And even the things that we're talking about, like where you find out you're doing it wrong from the producer's end, like for me, that list is still happening, right?
Oh, so yeah, like, me too.
You get that feedback every show or even mid show, and you're like, oh shit, I didn't know I was doing that wrong. And so you're like constantly making adjustments, and you can take all the criticism and just like melt. And there's definitely been shows where I'm like, I'm never doing this again. Like I'm melting down. Or you like have every line is a chance to reset and be like, okay, like I'm going to get this one thing right today. Like this is what I'm working on. And then like you bring it for every part of the show, and you have to celebrate that. Like, at least that's what I do. I'm like, okay, I feel like my enthusiasm went up this show. Like, good job, Des. And then like, what am I working on the next show? But also don't lose the enthusiasm. Now you need to bring this. And like the list is so long of things that I need to get better at. So if you look at the negative side of it, it's like, I'm already getting that from myself. So I don't need more of it, but I'm going to work on getting all the things that I want to better each time and like celebrate my progress. And if I get fired because I'm not good enough because the Twitter crowd is like, telling NBC at NBC, get rid of her, then that's that. Like maybe I'm just not cut out for it, but I'm going to like work on each little part and try to improve and like just make progress as I can. That's like my philosophy with it.
I like that. I also like, I really enjoy doing it. But it's not like the best paying job. And I don't have to do it, right? Like there's other things that I have to do to make the money that I need for my family. So it's more of like a fun experiment. And I think that has helped me a lot too, of like, I don't have to do this. Like, so I am going to be my authentic self. And if that doesn't connect, then they'll let me know and I'll try to make some adjustments. And if that still doesn't connect, it's like, okay, like I'm not for everybody. You're not for everybody. No, not one person is for everybody. But it's funny because I do respect very greatly feedback from my coworkers and the production team. Very much so. Like anything that Otto says, it's like in my little Bible because I think he's one of the greatest of all time at this job. But the troll stuff, I'm sometimes I'm like, that's the opposite of what NBC is telling me to
100%,
do.
right.
Yeah. Like, so like I'm going to go with them who, are broadcasting to millions and actually know this industry. They've been doing this for a long time. But it's just, it's really funny. Like the differences in the feedback that I get versus just like the angry pitchforks,
Can you tell me why you talk about yourself so much on the broadcast?
Oh,
give me the why. Because I just want people to understand this. And I'm not saying you, because when she say this why, it's every single one of us has been instructed
to bring yourself in.
Right.
You're the expert. Bring in your experiences. And that's something that I actually struggled with because I was like, I don't want to make it about me. I don't want that feedback of like, oh, Kara, we know you ran in Osaka, right? But then my producer is saying, you ran in a hot, humid race. Go back to Osaka. Tell us what that was like. So yeah, it's not like Des and I took this job so that we could go on TV and talk about ourselves, right? Like we have people in our ear saying, tie this to your experience, right?
And you establish the credibility, right? Like when I was at the Olympics and waiting in the call room face to face with my competitors, one of the most stressful things. And then I get out on the track and it's like, you can go out to her, like whatever it is. Like, so you bring in your experience and establish credibility, but ultimately the goal is to turn it back to the performance on the track or on the road. And every single broadcaster analyst does that. It's not like, let me tell you about myself during this entire race.
Totally.
But that's just a little nugget. The why behind it, right?
Yeah, it's just a little nugget that you're dropping in that, like you said, it gives you the credibility to actually then say what you're going to say next, right? Because you've actually been there, you've lived that situation. But yeah, I get that. I've gotten that too. Thanks for telling us all about your silver medal. You're welcome.
Yeah. I am an expert.
And I am, in fact, an expert at this distance. Thank you so much. Oh, man. So do you see yourself doing commentating in the future and continuing with it?
If they keep asking, I'll keep taking swings. I think I'm on a spring marathon, different network, coming up, and then I guess winter. Yeah, I mean, if there's opportunities, I think I will, because I like the learning process and just being like, oh, I got a little bit better. Like, oh, I'm finally getting that down. Oh, like, and I do think I have this knowledge that not a lot of people have. I've had a lot of running experiences, and so it's always fun to share them. But I do think that it's got to be said, it's probably one of the most thankless jobs out there. Like, so if it went away, if they're like, hey, you're just not getting this, we're done, I would be okay too. Like Betsy is always like, when she was there, she was like, oh yeah, I hope you get on another show, like stick with it. These are the things to work on. And like, I'm just dumb enough to keep trying. That's like my motto. I'm like, just dumb enough to give it one more go, one more go, one more go.
Yeah. I do appreciate everybody at NBC. And I know you do too. Like, it is such a fun group to work with. Like, I know that Trey Hardy had to call some distance races with you. And I just I love the friendships that are made. And I've never had anyone like on the team, like, feedback is one thing to make you better, but never like anything personal. Like, everyone I feel like has really wanted me to succeed. And I really appreciate that. It's a really great, supportive work environment.
Yeah, I guess I should clarify. Thankless from the like public.
No, from the public.
Right?
Oh no, I knew exactly what you were talking about. Yeah,
yeah,
I knew exactly what you were saying, because that was kind of my point. I guess was like, the people we work with get it. They know it's hard. They're great. They're in the trenches with us, and yeah, we get this feedback of like everything you did wrong, and never like, but those 8 other races you called were great. I have to say though, I do have this. I'll try to use the word goal. That you and I call some races together. I think it would be so fun. And I feel like when you're not running the Olympic trials anymore, like, we could be the dream team to call the Olympic trials marathon.
That would be phenomenal. I think
that'd be so fun.
The play-by, like, we'd have to have a 3-person booth, because I'm not doing play-by-play.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Paul or Lee can be in there with us. That's fine.
Yeah. I will do it for free. I'll do it for free, guys. Someone has to give. That would be really fun. And I think it would be just intriguing. We have a little bit of time left, but I guess like we've aired our grievances, but like, what about as far as like production and the people like managing what you're seeing on your screen? Like, can you talk a little bit about the world's feed versus like a show where NBC runs point? Like, what are the differences, and like when things cut away, and why we're seeing what we're seeing?
Yeah. Talking about being thankless or having that feeling, I feel like everybody like that runs the cameras, production, they never hear anything good, right? And there's so many people that are out there in bad weather, holding the cameras, everything. But people don't understand that at the Olympic trials, NBC is in charge of the cameras. At the World Championships, they are not. We can't go show whoever, like, when I called the Olympic trials, I felt like I was like a wizard. Like, I'd say someone's name and all of a sudden the camera would go to them. And I was like, this is how it is. This is amazing. And then I learned about World Feed, which is totally different. And whatever they choose to show, they show. And at World Championships, they'll do these like really weird slow motion things, like after a race of like someone's calf pushing off the track. I mean, and like, you have to just work with it, and you don't have any control. Most of the marathons have World Feed. And so if a woman goes out really hard, the camera's going to follow the leader. And then I hear from everybody, we never saw X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I feel your pain, but we didn't see those people either, right? So Yeah, help me air our grievances on the difference and the control that we have versus the control that we just don't have.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect example is the replays. Like you're talking, like I remember beginning of Diamond League this year, the producer was like, just FYI, the replays have been a little goofy over in whatever. Like we're getting a lot of close-ups of arm swings and like feet pushing off the track. So just do what you can do with that. And like sure enough, the first replay, you're like, amazing race, great finish. And so they're really digging into the track. Look at that foot, and you like it's not like a choice. It's not like they're like, this is the best image to do a replay with. Like, it's like, this is what you got. Make it interesting and make like the whole point is to continue to make people care. And you just do what you can with what you have in front of you. So it's not like choices, like this is the best for track and field. It's like, do the best you have with what you've been given from whatever international race this is.
This summer at the World Championships, they were showing like the winner, and then they would have second place, third place, fourth place with a plus in the time that they were behind them. And everyone was like telling me this isn't helpful. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but we don't have any control over that. Right. Yeah. So for Paris, I was in a meeting and I was like, please don't do that, especially for the distance events. It gives no context. You know what I would like to see? In a 10K, we get lap 1, we get the split, it goes away. But then when they come around for lap 2, the 1 is on there and the 2 is below it. And then it keeps going up the screen as the race goes on, because then we can help like give you a picture of the story we're trying to tell, of the moves that are made. But having the race finish and then having plus 2.5, plus 4.7, it isn't helpful. But we can't control that. And I think that's like hard to let people know. Like, we wish we had cameras everywhere and we could just do whatever we wanted. And there are some meets where we are allowed to do that, but Diamond League, the championships, like, we don't have that kind of access. We just kind of get what we're given. And yeah, we have to sometimes be like, look at that foot strike really slowly. And you just got to make it work.
I think what is interesting in that the kind of occasionally we do get some control, and like being in production meetings and like selling the distance stories. Like, I guess when I first started, I didn't realize how much you're like, no, this is going to be a big part of the meet. And like, you're almost like pitching your
totally
events. Right. And I was just kind of like watching, like, okay, like Otto's really going after, like, he's really, he knows all his stuff and like selling his stories, and they're amazing stories. But I'm like, oh, like if I want the distance to be the thing, to be the highlight, to be interesting, like to get the most time on camera, like you got to go in and really push for it and pitch it. And I think having you at these meetings, like for Paris, and, like just that insight on the splits alone, like it's possible to get changes. And so as much as we've like complained about some stuff and, explained a lot of stuff, it's also like, it's not like we're sitting in there. And I've learned this because I will say at the beginning, I did sit in there and go like very passively, like, yeah, sure. No, whatever you guys want. And now it's like, no, you have to show like this person, or this story is worth telling. Or like, I want like a package about like this moment, and cut that, like whatever else is out there. Like you're pushing against it, which I think is an interesting part of the process that people don't understand about even production meetings, like what's going to go on and what's not.
Yeah, I was just like you. That first year I was so passive. And then this year, like, we would have meetings like a month out of like different story ideas, and I would email them ahead of time. Like, these are my ideas, because those calls can go on forever. And it was like, this is important, and I didn't do that the first year. I was just like, yeah, whatever you guys want to do is fine. Like, I mean, whatever, and then this year I was more like, no, we need to focus on this. This is actually historical. We get to see it live. Like, we need to, but that doesn't mean that it gets on. But I do think the producers are very receptive. Mm-hmm. At the World Championships, my producer just had a miscount on laps, and we went away in the women's 10,000 with like 3 laps to go. And people were so pissed, and they had the right to be. And he was like, I'm so sorry. Like, and he took onus. He's like, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought they still had 6 laps to go. And so again, like, we're all humans. Like, we want to produce a really good show. We want to highlight the athletes, but sometimes things happen and sometimes mistakes are made.
Totally. And I think everyone's advocating for what they love. Like, I guess that's right. The point I would like to get across. Like, we know the commercials suck in the middle of the distance and like they have to go somewhere, but like there is a point where you're like, okay, this race is crazy good. Like I know the world record in the 1500 meters might go down. Like, do not. This is
Under
the one.
any circumstances.
Like, I'm going to pound the table for this one. And like you pick your battles and that's all you can do. But like, I think both of us are aware of what's interesting in the sport. And Paul does a really good job too for the Diamond League stuff. We're advocates for distance races and we're doing our best to get those on there as much as possible. And like, yeah, like just try it this one time, giving me the full steeplechase. Okay, fine. Like, yes, that's a win. Like that's a little victory, you know? And again, we're not going to get it all at once, but like we're pounding the table as, I mean, like for me, it's as I become more and more comfortable, but you know, I think it's a process.
Yeah, for sure. We're both growing. We're going to work on it. We're going to get more distance on, more split screens, all that good stuff.
All right. So, one wish list thing for the broadcast that would make you super happy. Maybe it's like going to a race and getting to call it or something you'd like to see change. If you could pick one thing right now that you could 100% make happen, what would it be?
Well, this is like totally pie in the sky, but I wish I was fit enough to like jump in a marathon and run like part of it with them and then be able to like talk about like what I was feeling, how people sounded, right? Like this doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even work. But I have like these fantasies of like, oh, I'm going to help call Chicago, like, but in the field.
Yeah.
Again, this would never happen because I can't even run on pavement, but I just like have this thing of like really getting into the nitty gritty and like I want people to hear people breathing. I guess that's one of the things I really want, like to hear that. Like, you know, in a marathon, you can hear everybody, you can hear little grunts, all these things. And I wish we could get that kind of energy and that kind of like little detail on to the screen so that people could feel that too.
It would be cool if they could do like a mic'd up, like we're going to pick these couple athletes and just like mic them up and then.
Okay, that makes more sense than what I said. Yes, let's do that.
We could start there. And then, you know, if we could get you fit enough, we could. Have you ever seen the clip where the woman thought she was going to do the interview while they were running and she started to run with them and they just like blew by?
No.
It's super entertaining. I'm going to send it to you, but I don't want that to happen to you. We're going to get you fit enough. In the meantime, we'll do mic'd up.
Mic'd up is a great idea. What about
or
you?
Like a headpiece. That would be cool. Like you could do. There was also. Sorry, I'm avoiding the question because I don't have a thing. But there's also in MLB this year, like they did earpiece in like an outfielder's ear, and they conducted this whole interview mid inning, which I thought was a little weird, but I thought it was kind of cool. It was different, and you couldn't really do that with running. But I think it would be interesting to pick up like again the breathing, but also early on it's like conversational, right? You're not like in the well. So like are there conversations going on? Like is there team dynamics? Like there's a lot that you could pick up just from like miking up a few players and having that like basically a hot mic on them.
Do you know what my goal for you is or what I would love to see for you?
Tell me. I don't.
I have to hear you call Boston. I know it's not going to happen anytime soon, but as soon as you're like, I'm not running Boston this year, if I don't see you on the broadcast, everybody listening, I'm not even talking to NBC. I'm talking to ESPN, ABC. I don't really care who you are. If I don't hear you calling that race, I'm going to angry tweet at a lot of people.
I love it. Yeah, that'd be bucket list for sure. Like, I think it's I would have to, and I've heard a lot of people say this. They're like, I thought I would exit the sport and never follow it again. And then a couple years later, I was just like into the broadcast and I follow it closer than ever. But I feel like I would need a little buffer time to like, and I'm saying peers, but most of them are through now. But like the people that you really compete against, and like it's super hard to give true analysis when you're like, I don't want to be like mean or like, are people going to view this as like me being jealous? And like, we get that on Twitter even where you're like, let me analyze this thing that's happening in the sport or just make some commentary on it. And people are like, well, you're just jealous. Like, okay, well, forget it.
Right.
So I would need some buffer time. But that is definitely bucket list. That would be a lot of fun.
And maybe you just need buffer time too. Like I could not have called the 2020 trials. I wasn't there yet. I was still mourning that my career was over. I was jealous. I went and watched, and halfway through, I went down an alley and cried super hard for like 5 minutes. And then I came back out and cheered everybody on. And then my old agent, Dan Lila, like texted me. He was like, somebody saw you bawling. Are you okay? I was like, yes, I'm just grieving the end of my career, right? Like I loved being a professional athlete and it didn't end the way I wanted, just like everybody else almost. And in that moment of watching you guys go by, I was just it was very emotional, right? And so I just had to go cry by myself, but I would not have been able to do that broadcast. And it was so good for me that a whole nother year went by before I was asked to do it because I just wasn't at a place yet where I could do that. You're already doing the broadcasting, so I don't think you'll have that same reaction where you have to like go cry and then come back. Or maybe you will. I don't know.
TBD. All right. Well, there's a whole nother topic for the future there because I think that for me personally, just for selfish reasons, I'd love to pick your brain about transitioning out of the sport. And like, I think that's such a big topic that there's a lot of weight around and, just confusion and like retiring when you're, in your 30s or 40s, like that's not something that is normal. And it's been a big part of your identity for a long time. So I'd love to, I'm moving this towards the end. We're going to exit here, but
okay.
Teasing a future idea. I would love to pick your brain about that. And so I can more healthily take care of that process myself as it comes my way like a freight train.
Oh, you got time, but we can definitely talk about that. Well, thanks for chatting with me again today. This has been so fun. I hope everyone likes it and we will definitely be back.
Thank you. Sounds great. Take care.